Let's get to the next part. This is clearly, I think, the Trump campaign on the back foot, and they're trying to force a conversation here about, hey, why has Kamala Harris not done any interviews? J.D. Vance yesterday, his plane was on the same tarmac as Air Force Two and decided to walk over to the press corps of the Kamala Harris campaign and ask them why they haven't been pressing Kamala to do more questions. Let's take a listen.
I figured I'd come by and one, just get a good look at the plane, because hopefully it's going to be my plane in a few months, but I also thought you guys might get lonely because the vice president doesn't answer questions from reporters and hasn't for 17 days. Have they given you guys an explanation for why she won't take questions from reporters? No? Nobody? Okay, great. Well, I hope that she changes her mind, because it'd be good for the American people, and I think it'd be good for you all if she actually ran a real campaign instead of one from a basement with a teleprompter. So have a good one, guys. See ya. What would you like to hear from her? I'd love her to answer some questions. I'd love her to just answer what she wants to do and also explain why every single position she has changed.
So he's trying to get the conversation going. Actually, some in the national media have picked it up. Let's put this up there on the screen from Dave Weigel. He says, yeah, it makes sense that Harris wasn't doing media during the Veep selection when a bunch of questions would have been irrelevant. But now there's a ticket, there's a press corps. Why don't you just shoot them some news of the day questions on the plane? You know, JD actually has, I think he's done like 16 interviews just in the last couple of days. Now, look, that's not an excuse. You know, it should be Trump who's doing a lot of these interviews.
Yeah.
Why he's, like, I think the Aiden Ross streaming thing, it's fine, okay? Like, it's fun, I'm sure. It's probably very enjoyable to do an extremely friendly interview in a stream.
Give him like the Rolex or something like that.
Yeah, he gave him a Rolex, which people are wondering if that's an FEC violation. That's this is an interesting one. I've never seen somebody gift an interviewee something. It's usually the interviewers who are trying to curry favor, you know, with the person who's interviewing them. So anyway, so my thing with Trump is he's doing this Aiden Ross thing.
Yeah.
He's got an interview with Elon on Monday, which you can ask Ron DeSantis about that. And by the way, this is all fine if you're just, you know, want to gin up enthusiasm amongst people who already agree with you.
Yeah.
Bro, you're in the fight of your life right now. Like, he's doing a press conference today. I think that's great. I think Kamala should do one too. And hopefully they're gonna try and change the conversation around that. But what do you think, Krystal, like in terms of the strategy? Because I mean, Walz hasn't done an interview yet. Hopefully he does some. I'd actually like to see that.
Yeah.
But Kamala, I mean, 17 days now, no major sit down. Joe Biden has done a CBS News sit down. So the freaking dead vice president is doing more interviews than you. I think he's done 2 interviews since he dropped out of the race.
Yeah.
What's happening here?
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, from a democracy standpoint,
it's terrible.
It's terrible. Like, you got put in this position. There was no open process. Right. You know, they canceled the primary, so that wasn't available. Then they just picked you, and you know, here we are. Okay. And then you don't even answer any questions, do a press conference, whatever. This is, though, in a lot of senses, the modern media landscape. And so do I think she's going to pay a price for it? Like, I wish, you know, Trump would pay a price for also mostly overwhelmingly sitting with friendly people like Fox News or Aiden Ross. He's got that 12 to 15-year-old boy demo locked up there. But I don't think that they do pay a price for it. I just think that's, like, people have gotten used to this media landscape where all they do is friendly interviews, softball questions, go out and give a teleprompter speech, et cetera. And so, you know, we've actually got this Shark Tank guy, what's his name? Kevin
O'Leary.
Kevin O'Leary. Saying basically like, yeah, no, they're in euphoric mode. No, they're not going to answer any questions. And he's like, that's probably a smart strategy. And I can't really disagree, because in terms of strategy, because we know Kamala, her weakness is when she is caught off guard. That's when she has had her worst moments. Lester Holt interview, you know, in the debates when she would be caught off guard, when Tulsi Gabbard was challenging her, et cetera. That's when she's most vulnerable. She's always been a very cautious politician in terms of who she would allow access to her. So it doesn't surprise me that they're pursuing this strategy. And unfortunately, I think it's probably the right one. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
It's intentional. She has no intention of putting any policy out there until this convention's over. I'm a very fortunate guy because I'm an investor, and for decades I've been syndicating debt, primarily for real estate. Some of her closest advisors are people I work with in finance. And we're friends. So I call them up and say, hey, listen, you want to talk about policy here? And they said, listen, everything's working right now. We're going to strong arm the press on policy. We don't need to do anything.
Wait. What's everything's working?
The momentum's crazy. The press she's getting right now, she is sucking.
Her campaign.
The campaign.
Okay.
The campaign is working.
Okay.
And there's no reason to sit down with any journalist and talk policy right now because we're in the euphoric stage. They think they can raise up to $300 million before this whole thing that's going to happen over the weekend is over. So that's extraordinary amount of money. Then it's time to talk policy. Then it's time to go to the center. Then it's time to talk about border.
All right. So are they telling you where she stands?
No. They're just saying, listen, we don't worry about this right now. We don't have a problem. No problem here, Houston. We're just raising dough. And you got to hand it to her. They're now talking within that campaign about a path to winning that they didn't even see 8 days ago.
And here's the other thing, too, Saagar, is like Kamala has already signaled that she's running away from every progressive position she took in 2020. And so, of course, any reporter worth their salt is going to ask her about those things. And I think she very much prefers to live in this ambiguous state of like, we don't really know what she stands for.
That's what you want.
And allowing people to project, as they did onto Obama, whatever they want to see in her. And I think they're going to keep that going as long as they can. That's not an endorsement of the strategy. I think she should be taking questions. I think it's really important to know what the agenda would be, what the priorities would be, et cetera. I think she should be challenged on those things. But I, don't doubt that that's the way that they're thinking about it.
I mean, to borrow, everybody has basically said this. It's a vibes election, and vibes are good whenever you don't have to take any positions. Like with Trump, one of the things that's sinking him with the Gen Pop is that he's got January 6th, stop the steal, which is, look, you can, hate it and all that. It's not only a bad vibe, but on a policy level, it's explicitly like, I did not agree with the votes last time around in 2020. Now, same with abortion, where it's a concrete thing. You appointed the justices and they overturned Roe versus Wade. With Kamala, what are you going to do at all? What are you going to do with Israel? What do you think about NATO and Ukraine? What are you going to do with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? This is literally the most urgent and pressing economic matter in decades in Washington. The extension fight, probably since the Bush tax cuts in 2000, I forget the last time that they were extended.
The Democrats caved on.
The Democrats caved on. Right, so are you gonna do that again? You said previously, I would repeal TCJA on day one. Now, that's not gonna happen because it's an act of Congress. Do you agree with that? Like, which parts of it would you extend? Would you strike? What would your strategy be? Remember, Joe Biden got so many questions on the campaign trail last time around about how he was gonna work with Mitch McConnell. Now his answers were mostly stupid, but he got a lot of questions about that. That's a great thing for Kamala Harris. You literally served in the Senate. What do you believe? What would you sign? Would you see CTC? To what extent? How high? What is your tax policy? Are you borrowing from Joe Biden? You've disavowed every previous position you've ever had on the border, on everything, but because the enthusiasm is still so high, Ryan said this, and I really think it's so true. She wants to get as close to that number on the ticket that previously used to poll of generic Democrat. That's all you want.
Yeah.
You don't want to take positions, don't want to piss people off. And I agree, though, it's very unfortunate because many people are, frankly, totally fine with this, both in terms of partisan media. I mean, I see it all the time with Trump. They're like, oh, it was such a genius move. I'm like, yeah, was it a genius move? It's like Trump, I actually think Trump functions at his best and is able to capture the most media in hostile environments. I mean, look, you can hate that black journalist event or whatever if you want. It took over the world for a brief moment. The CNN town hall that he did, same thing. I mean, everybody covered it. I think he actually functions both at a media capture level and probably at a better level in terms of showing his contrast or whatever in those. Now, does he also hang himself? Certainly, that's Donald Trump. But with Kamala and with her previous wish-washing, as you're saying, even a Lester Holt, I frankly think even the most friendly interviewer of Rachel Maddow or somebody, you gotta ask something, because then you just completely sacrifice you sacrifice any of your integrity, whatever scrap is left. And when you combine those two, they're still giving her a pass, though. You only have a few like Dave Weigel. I saw Maggie Haberman as well retweet that. But if the national reporters start to press her, it's possible she could cave, but it might be too late. I mean, they might wait a whole month. I think that's you can't wait a month. I think that's outrageous.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing in terms of the Trump side prosecuting this case, we keep using that term. But anyway, trying to make this case against Kamala Harris, the other weakness they have is like Trump has kind of gotten squishy about whether he's going to agree to a debate. So you don't exactly look like you're out front and wanting to demonstrate to the American people and get into a back and forth with her either. So yeah, I mean, like you said, it's sad that this is the environment that we live in. It's sad that it probably, you know, people don't really care that much. It feels like a kind of a process question. All of that is the case. You know, it's sad that the press doesn't press her more on these things and doesn't press Trump more on his tendency to only sit with friendly audiences. But you're absolutely right about Trump. I don't think that, with Kamala, I think the strategy, whether I like it or not, I think it makes sense. With Trump, it doesn't make sense because he needs to reclaim this narrative.
He needs to take over the airwaves the way he did in 2016.
His greatest gift is being able to drive the conversation and force people into the debate on his terms. Now, I personally think the way he did that at the NABJ conference was very destructive to him. I don't think it was helpful whatsoever, but it demonstrated his ability to seize the moment and force people to talk about whatever he wants them to be talking about. He's very good at that. And so, you know, for him to avoid any sort of hostile questioning and for him to have ghettoized himself on Truth Social, where no one really gives a shit what he's saying over there either. I think these, and when we do pay attention, it's like, oh, you're attacking Brian Kemp. Good job. Great work with that. You know, I think these are some serious errors that he is making in this campaign. And I do think that he is, you know, we forget he's an older man also. He's not as feeble as Joe Biden was, et cetera. But older people, they get kind of stuck in a rut. And I think he's having trouble grappling with the switch in the top of the ticket. I think he really is struggling to adjust to that because even though maybe somewhere in his mind he thought it was a possibility, he clearly didn't really believe that that was going to happen and clearly didn't really plan for the eventuality of that happening. And so now he's out there still talking about Joe Biden, constructing in his mind some elaborate conspiracy theory that maybe we're going to bring Joe Biden back onto the ticket and can't really move on and prosecute an effective case against the ticket that he actually is running up against.
We have been so gaslit by aging politicians that I'm so struck by just a return to normal. Like JD's got 2 interviews out this morning. He did 4 campaign events yesterday. That's actually normal. That's how it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be like you're supposed to be out there working a lot.
The only thing that happened with Kamala that should have happened, didn't happen yesterday, is she was supposed to take questions on the plane in between stops. Okay, and we just did a whole segment about that. But she did 2 campaign stops. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Trump has been sitting in Mar-a-Lago for 5 freaking days, tweeting about truthing about Brian Kemp. That's not what we're supposed to do. And that's where I'm struck just by literally the age difference of having younger people on the ticket and how much more beneficial it is. So I've probably never been more ageist whenever it comes to politics than it is right now. Because I'm like, oh yeah, this is how it was supposed to be. I mean, you know, old McCain worked harder than both of these guys did. Joe Biden and Trump did. Whenever he was on the campaign trail in 2008, and there was a whole national conversation, how old is he, 60 or something, 62, about whether he was too old to be president.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.